Okay, so we're going to talk about now is the checklist of a mission brief. What to think about when you're planning a mission, and exactly what to think about when you're going to brief a mission. All right. And the acronym that we're going to use today is MET RRCC. And that's M with four E's, three T's, two R's, and two C's. Okay, so let's jump right in it. The first thing that you're going to talk about is the mission itself. You're going to tell the people exactly what the mission is. It's basically an outline of who, what, where, and when. So you're going to say today's mission is X, Y, or Z. The next thing you're going to talk about is the elements in the mission. What elements will be used in this mission? What squads, what people, things like that. What are the elements? The next thing you're going to talk about is the enemy of this mission. What are enemies? If there is any enemies. This could be a mission to go, provide help for someone that's in a disaster area or something like that. So there might not be any enemies, or the enemy might be bad weather or something like that. So that's the enemy. The next thing you're going to talk about is the environment. And the environment of the mission. What's the weather? What's the, how is that going to affect us in the environment? So everything around the environment. Is it flooding? Things like that. And then next you're going to talk about is the equipment that you're going to use. What equipment will we be using in this mission? You're going to detail each one of these things. You're going to detail it out in your planning and in your mission brief. Okay, the next thing. So we got the four E's. So the MET, the four E's of the MET. Now we're going to go into the T's. We're going to talk about the terrain. What is the terrain? And the terrain and environment can kind of be the same. If you want to put those two together, that's fine. But I just put it here so you make sure you talk about the terrain. This could actually be the weather, and this could actually be like the bumpy surface. So are we in the mountains? Is the roads going to be closed? Are we going to have to use boats? I mean, what's our terrain? All right, the next thing we're going to talk about on there is the transportation. What's our transportation? How are we going to get there? What are we using? The next thing we're going to talk about, or you're going to think about, is a timeline. Timeline is very important, especially on a military mission. You have to know who's going to be where and when to hit your target. If not, people will be hitting at different times. It's going to mess everything up. So timeline is very important. Now we can do a whole class on just timeline. Like when will the mission start? What's the start point time? What's checkpoint 1 time? What's checkpoint 2 time? What's time on target? Are we plus or minus 10 seconds, or are we plus or minus 10 minutes? Which one is it? So timeline is important. All right, we've covered all these, and now we're down to the R's. So the R's are the rules of engagement, or the rules of the mission. So what is our rules of engagement? Is it shoot, no shoot, shoot, don't shoot until fired upon, blah, blah, blah. Or if we're in a civilian deal and we're going to do a humanitarian rescue or something like that, what's the rules of the guys that are going or the girls that are going? Are we all wearing, a certain uniform? Are we not drinking? Are we not, are we going to bed at a certain time? I mean, what are our rules? You always have to lay out the rules. If not, you have people doing crazy stuff and you'll say, man, I wish I'd had some rules to this. Okay, so the next one is going to be our routes. You're going to have to plan your routes. So what routes are we taking? And we'll talk about that more in just a minute on the routes, or actually how you should plan in depth on that. So the routes. The next is going to be the commo. And the commo is really important because you need to know how you're going to talk to each other. What frequency you're going to talk on, or what channels you're going to talk on, or what phone numbers you're going to use, or what does certain beeps on a whistle mean, those sort of things. How are you going to communicate? That's the big thing. So it needs to be, what's your commo? That's a big one. And then the last one is your contingency. So your contingency, what are we going to do if things on this particular plan fail? And normally they do fail. So you got to have a contingency. And when we talk about contingency, we got to talk about the pace planning. You're like, well, what does pace mean? Well, pace means when you plan anything, you plan it to 4 deep levels. And the first level will be your primary. So this would be our primary plan. If we go through and we make a plan and we're going to do this mission with these people, with this equipment, at this time, blah, blah, blah. But if that doesn't work out, then we need to have an alternate plan. So PACE alternate. So what is our alternate plan? If things in here that we've talked about and that we've planned to the detail, if that doesn't work in our alternate plan, and then let's say we go to our alternate plan and that doesn't work, what do we need to have? We need to have a contingency plan. So our contingency plan, what's our contingency plan? If we're using our telephones and then there's no cell service, and then we go over to radios, we go over to CB radios, and all of a sudden that doesn't work, then what's our next plan? You know, what's our contingency? Do we go to ham radios? I mean, what do we do? Okay, so our contingency plan. So, and then the last thing is our emergency plan. What is our emergency plan if everything fails that we've talked about in our mission, or we plan our mission? What is our emergency plan? Are we going to just drop everything, get in our vehicles or the things that are running or moving and go back to a certain area? I mean, what are we going to do? So whenever you're doing a mission brief checklist, and that's what this is, a mission brief checklist, always go 4 deep and go to the emergency plan, from the primary all the way to the emergency. Okay? So just, I mean, we could do a class on each one of these things if we wanted to, especially like timeline, equipment, you know, these bags that you pack that everybody works about, bug out bags and survival bags and stuff. Well, that's all part of the equipment, and that all depends on the environment and the terrain and the enemy, you know, and the actual mission itself. You know, so all these things kind of work together, and these are elements that you have to think about in your planning, and then you have to bring out and flesh out down to the 4th detail in your mission brief. Okay? All right. Hope you have a great mission.